What if everything you've believed about being human was just a well-crafted illusion? From the moment you were born, you were told who you are, a name, a body, a role to play. But none of that is truly you. And here's the twist nobody talks about. The more you try to control your life, the more it controls you. That's not freedom, that's slavery wearing a modern mask. The reason you feel anxious, reactive, or lost, it's not because of what's happening around you. It's because you forgot what's happening within you. You've been hypnotized to think you're just a mind, chasing goals, avoiding pain, trying to keep it all together. But deep down, there's a presence, quiet, unshaken, untouched, that's always been there, watching the chaos without being consumed by it. In this video, I'll show you how to return to that awareness, to unplug from the illusion of self, to stop being a puppet of emotion, fear, or praise. Because once you remember who you really are, nothing and no one will ever have power over you again. 1. The illusion that the world is doing something to you. Most men grow up thinking life is a battlefield, that things are constantly happening to them. Someone cuts them off in traffic and it ruins their whole morning. Their boss criticizes a detail and they spiral for hours. But what if the real problem isn't what's happening, but what they believe it means? That's where the illusion starts. It's not the world that's attacking, it's the mind assigning meaning to neutral events. This is where most people give their power away. They walk around with emotional buttons exposed, and anyone can press them. A partner's silence becomes rejection. A delay becomes failure. A no becomes personal. But these aren't truths. They're conditioned interpretation. Inner power begins the moment you realize no one has the ability to make you feel anything unless you agree with the story in your head. Imagine you're watching a movie. If the scene is intense, your body reacts. Your heart races, your palms sweat. But deep down you know it's not real. That's how awareness works. It helps you step back and see your thoughts and emotions as passing scenes, not facts. Most men have never practiced this. They were taught to react, not reflect. That's why everything feels so heavy. They're carrying illusions without knowing it. If you can pause next time something upsets you, just for 5 seconds, you'll feel the shift. That moment of space is everything. It's not about becoming passive or numb. It's about seeing clearly, understanding that your reactions are optional. And once you see that, the control the world seems to have over you starts slipping through your fingers like sand. 2. The world mirrors your inner wounds. Every man's got scars, but not all of them are visible. Some show up as anger, some as shame, others as overthinking or constant self-doubt. What most don't realize is that the world will always poke at those wounds, not to hurt you, but to reveal where you're still bleeding inside. That's not punishment, that's feedback, a form of awareness whispering, look here. Say someone calls you irresponsible, and it hits a nerve. That sting doesn't come from their words. It comes from a buried belief you've carried for years. Maybe it's from a childhood where nothing you did was ever enough. That's how the illusion of self is built, layer after layer of unprocessed emotions disguised as personality. And every trigger is the world's way of showing you where that illusion still runs the show. Instead of getting defensive or shutting down, try this. Next time you feel triggered, pause and ask, where have I felt this before? You'll be surprised how quickly the pattern reveals itself. Triggers aren't random. They're patterns replaying themselves, hoping you'll finally face them instead of fighting them. That's how healing begins, not by changing the world, but by decoding its messages. It's a shift from victim to observer, from reacting to reflecting. And as that shift deepens, something wild happens. The world gets quieter. Not because it stopped challenging you, but because you stopped interpreting every challenge as an attack. You begin to see that the world isn't your enemy, it's your mirror, and behind every reflection a deeper truth is waiting to be uncovered. 3. You are not your reactions, you are the awareness behind them. Reactions feel automatic, like someone flips a switch and boom, you're angry, anxious, offended. But here's the thing. You are not the switch. You're the one watching it happen. That space between the trigger and the explosion, that's your true nature, awareness. And when you start noticing it more often, your reactions lose their grip. You begin to feel a sense of detachment, like life's chaos is happening on a screen instead of inside your chest. This isn't some mystical concept reserved for monks. It's actually very practical. Next time your partner says something that normally sets you off, just pause. Feel the heat rising, but don't act. Say to yourself, there it is, the program is kicking in. That moment of observation is everything. It's not about suppression, it's about choice, the ability to respond instead of just react. The illusion of self thrives on reactions. It says, you're an angry person, or you always mess this up. But those are just repeated emotional loops that you've mistaken for identity. The more you practice watching them instead of merging with them, the more you realize they don't define you. You're not the voice in your head, you're the one hearing it. And that awareness is untouchable. Over time, you stop flinching. Not because you don't feel, but because you finally know you're not those fleeting feelings. You're the stillness behind them, the space they pass through, and that changes everything. Because once you start seeing from that place, you're not a puppet anymore. You're the one holding the strings. But even that realization opens the door to something deeper. 4. The false self was never you. There's a character in your mind that's been narrating your entire life, and most people mistake that voice for their true self. It's the voice that says, I'm not good enough, or I need to be better, or even, I'm a spiritual person now. But none of that is real. That's the false self. A bundle of memories, fears, expectations, and roles you've picked up since childhood. It's not who you are. It's just who you've been pretending to be because nobody ever taught you there was something deeper beneath it all. And that deeper part? That's the awareness watching the role unfold, untouched by the story. Think about this. If your name changed tomorrow, your job disappeared, and every person you know forgot who you were, would you still exist? Of course, because the real you isn't tied to labels, achievements, or past mistakes. You're not the successful man, the failure, the funny guy, or the hard worker. Those are masks, temporary identities you wear to play the game. But the one behind the mask, that calm observer who sees the game, that's where your inner power truly lives. You can feel it when everything goes quiet and you're just there without a role to play. You don't need to fight the false self or burn it to the ground. That's just another trick it plays, keeping you in the loop of fixing, upgrading, or reinventing what was never real to begin with. What you need is awareness, the simple act of noticing. When the inner critic shows up, when the mind starts comparing, when the need to prove something creeps in, just notice it. See it for what it is, a shadow, not your source. That observation is how the illusion starts falling apart. That's when detachment becomes possible, not as avoidance, but as liberation. And once the false self starts fading, something strange happens. You feel lighter, like a weight's been lifted. Conversations feel freer. Conflicts feel less personal. You don't need to win, impress, or convince anymore. You're just there, real, present, grounded. And it's in that grounded awareness that a new kind of freedom begins to rise. A freedom most men don't even know they've been missing until it touches them for the first time in stillness. And it's in that stillness that the next revelation quietly starts to appear. 5. Emotional triggers are doorways to freedom. Most men avoid emotional discomfort like it's a fire they'll get burned by. But what if that fire was actually the light showing them the way out? Every emotional trigger, the irritation, the envy, the defensiveness, is pointing to a part of you that's asking to be seen. Not judged, not shamed, just seen. Triggers don't show you what's wrong with the world, they show you what's still unresolved inside. And when you stop running from them and start leaning in, something powerful begins to unfold. You stop being a prisoner of your reactions, and you start becoming a student of your own healing. Let's say your friend shares a big win on social media, and suddenly your stomach tightens. You feel envy creeping in, maybe even some guilt for feeling that way. Most people brush that off, pretend they're not affected, or worse, start resenting the other person. But the aware man uses that moment. He breathes into the discomfort and asks, what belief is this poking at? Where do I feel I've fallen behind? That question turns a reactive moment into a reflective one, and it's that reflection that reveals the root of the wound, the real issue, not the symptom. Healing isn't about avoiding emotional pain. It's about having the courage to sit with it, observe it, and listen to what it's trying to teach. You don't need to overanalyze it or turn it into a project. Sometimes just sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and saying, "I see you," is enough to begin shifting the energy. And when you do that often enough, you start realizing those triggers have less and less power. You're no longer being yanked around by old programming. That's not denial, that's mastery. And the wildest part, as you stop fearing your triggers, you actually become more open, more connected, more grounded in your inner power. Because now, emotions aren't threats, they're signals, messages from awareness, asking you to look inward. And when you start treating every reaction as a doorway, you walk right into the next level of freedom, which just so happens to be impossible when you're still clinging to the illusion of control. 6. The illusion of control and the trap of attachment. The biggest lie most men buy into is the idea that if they can just control everything, their schedule, their partner, their future, then they'll finally feel safe. But that need for control, it's a trap. Because the more you try to manage every detail of life, the more anxious, reactive, and drained you become. Why? Because life isn't something you control, it's something you respond to. And every time you grip harder, you lose touch with your own awareness, the very thing that could guide you with calm and clarity through the chaos. Control is seductive. It feels like power, but it's rooted in fear. You attach your peace to people's behaviors, outcomes, plans, all of which are outside your hands. Your partner texts back quickly and you feel secure. They delay and you spiral. That's not love, that's dependency. It's the illusion of self trying to stay alive by clinging to predictability. But true inner power has nothing to do with controlling outcomes. It's about learning how to stay steady, no matter how uncertain things get. That's where detachment starts to rise. Want to practice letting go of control? Start small. The next time someone interrupts your plan, traffic, a cancelled meeting, a delay, pause. Take 3 slow breaths and ask yourself, is this mine to control or just mine to experience? That question alone creates space, and in that space you start to see what's real and what's just your mind trying to tighten the grip again. That space is your training ground for peace. Not peace that depends on everything going your way, but peace that doesn't break when it doesn't. Over time, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to micromanage the world, and you start managing your energy. You shift from a man clenching his fists to one standing grounded in his own presence. And that presence, that quiet confidence, starts to guide you in ways control never could. And just when you think you've figured it out, life will offer you a new twist, a new situation, a new lens to look through, because it's never really the situation, it's always your perception. 7. Your perception creates your reality. 2 men can face the exact same challenge, a job loss, a breakup, a health scare, and walk away with completely different stories. One falls apart, the other rises. The difference, it's not luck or circumstances or even timing. It's perception. The way you see an event changes how it lives in your nervous system. If you see life as unfair, you'll find injustice everywhere. If you see life as a teacher, every moment becomes a lesson. Awareness is what allows you to pause, observe your interpretation, and shift it before it hijacks your peace. Imagine waking up late and spilling coffee on your shirt. You could curse your day, snap at your family, and start a downward spiral. Or you could laugh, change your shirt, and keep it moving. The outer world didn't change, but your perception did, and that shifted your entire experience. That's not delusion, that's power. Inner power, the ability to choose your state, even when the world doesn't cooperate. And the more you train that muscle, the less reactive and more resilient you become. Want to shift your perception? Start asking better questions. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this showing me about myself? Keep a journal. Nothing fancy, just 10 minutes a day to unpack your thoughts. Or try flipping your language. When you catch yourself saying, this sucks, try, this is stretching me. That shift doesn't erase challenges, but it reframes them in a way that puts you back in the driver's seat. Because the story you tell yourself is the life you end up living. Eventually, perception becomes more than just mindset. It becomes your baseline reality. You stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from grounded awareness. And that's when life begins to open up in ways you couldn't predict. Not because it suddenly got easier, but because you stopped carrying so many filters of fear. And as those filters fall away, a deeper form of detachment begins to rise, not as disconnection, but as clarity. A clarity that gives you space to finally feel free in your own skin. 8. Detachment is not coldness, it's mastery. Detachment gets a bad rap. People hear the word and think it means shutting down, not caring, becoming robotic. But real detachment isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. It's the difference between drowning in a wave and learning how to surf it. When you're detached, you're not numb, you're steady. You still feel emotions, but they no longer control your behavior. That's not apathy, that's awareness. That's the beginning of true mastery over your inner world. Picture yourself walking into a tense meeting. Someone throws a passive-aggressive jab your way. The old you would fire back or stew in silence, but the detached version, he sees it, maybe even feels the heat rise. But he doesn't react. He observes, breathes, and chooses how to respond, if at all. That's power. Not flashy, not loud, just grounded. That's how detachment upgrades your everyday life, from conversations to relationships to how you handle setbacks. If you want to cultivate this kind of detachment, start by noticing where your emotions hook you the most. Is it when someone disagrees with you, when plans change, when someone doesn't text back? These are the moments to pause and say, I can feel this, and still choose not to be ruled by it. Meditation helps. So does breathwork. So does simply walking away for 5 minutes before you react. Every time you do that, you're not suppressing. You're training your awareness to lead instead of your ego. And with time, that becomes your default. You stop taking things personally. You stop making emotional decisions you later regret. You become a man who can sit with discomfort without being consumed by it. And from that inner steadiness, something even more profound begins to rise. A version of you untouched by emotion, untouched by ego, untouched by the illusion of self. And once that version shows up, everything changes. Because now you're no longer just managing life, you're embodying something greater. 9. The untouchable mind is your divine self awakened. There's a moment, and you'll know it when it hits, where you stop flinching. Not because life gets easier, but because you've remembered who you really are. You're not the thoughts. You're not the reactions. You're not even the story you've been telling yourself for years. You're awareness itself. And when that awareness becomes your home base, you unlock something most people never touch in a lifetime, the untouchable mind. A state where nothing outside you has the power to shake your peace unless you hand it over voluntarily. It's not about becoming invincible to pain. It's about knowing that no matter what arises, fear, loss, judgment, you remain whole. Imagine standing in the middle of chaos and realizing there's a part of you untouched by it all. That's not imagination. That's your real nature. Most men spend their entire lives defending a false identity, trying to be strong, be enough, be somebody. But your real strength was never about becoming something. It was about dropping everything you're not. And once you've tasted that version of yourself, everything changes. People feel it when they're around you. They can't explain it, but they sense the steadiness, the presence, the stillness. You don't chase validation because you already know your worth. You don't seek control because you trust your alignment. And when others are thrown off course, they look to you for direction. Not because you're trying to lead, but because you're rooted in truth. That's the power of detachment guided by awareness. You didn't come here to be a puppet pulled by emotions, fears, and illusions. You came here to remember, to wake up, to realize that the one watching your life unfold has always been free. And from that place, no one and nothing can ever control you again, unless you forget. So now the question isn't, how do I protect my peace? It becomes, what happens when I stop pretending I'm anything less than who I truly am?